I want to talk to you.
You want, but a bit about the summer course and the importance of library,
Oh, okay, okay.
And then the arats, if you want. You said this morning that you will talk about the arats.
Okay. Lasso, you show that. Sit down, everybody sit down. I'm not teaching, okay? Just talk.
Yeah.
Lasso, number so, they pet the Sangal Trashi de Les, Tomate Mashugi.
So first, Khenpo Rinpoche would like to welcome everyone here.
Then, Tamancha the water the Mason corner beyond the young to non devere, Nal Turban water when you came in do. Yin the young. That's so much down beina. Penatabuka Julin sinking there. Young doji sange, Toma zug number. Toma tela, Tanda Karshu. Tapeche Dunshu Nai, Dunshu Nantavachi la, the Shije Tozo Ramteli Yungyot, Chijing Mirit, those Tozo Yungyot, eh? Then tea cup te, Jabjakal Rumbuche, then Canada pepper, Canada pebdu, Jabjakal Rumbuche, Tanda, Payag Lakchertan, Tensu Corte, Yinabar Chamju Shune, Yinabar Rule Kanachene. Druge travel document gela kalrum peso. Tene don't you turn some glonju yena, tunji go in tatting a safe share mendo. Kalrum just peso. The isn't of the shune that and the conquer chain Canada, America stroll in the chains in the shoes. Then yan jab your tumbarum chege isn't of America tongue, Nezol pen up payagundu. Korangi pila ta tanda tikabla dharma dhatu imba yo tetsu de yo tsugu yo pero nans dende shu chesu ti tende jiga kabla Mr. Benson singe de leson korangi jabi dunyaram chende shol dende shu bi dene yijina bon de shol penna ko sa pu dende chegi shu so.
So Khenpo Rinpoche mentions that there was already a lot of introduction, so he does not need to elaborate that further. But he says that Dhagpo, Kagyu Ling, the center was established by the 16th Jawang Karmapa Ranjung Rigpa Dorje, and it happened as follows. In the 1970s, Westerners started to arrive to Rumtek in Sikkim and seek audiences and guidance from His Holiness the 16th Jawang Karmapa. Approximately in those years, it was the Venerable Master Kalu Rinpoche who managed to obtain the Bhutanese travel documents and visited Canada and America. And he returned maybe at the end of 1973 or beginning of 74 to Rumtek and reported about his travels and endeavors in the West. And also it was the Venerable Trungpa Rinpoche who has by that time traveled to America and established the Dharmadhatu Center there, who requested His Holiness the 16th Jawang Karmapa to travel to the West, stating that it would be very beneficial. And that also coincided with Mr. Benson arriving to Rumtek due to his connection with Dujum Rinpoche, and informing His Holiness the 16th Jawang Karmapa that if he were to travel to this area, he would gladly offer him land.
Takap tindek tidu pebe lamachi sijil pegun pekale yore passport rag mare travel document te thobiale pe khakbu yore di yinsa rupa jabu sumbate yinbuge lomata jindare teni jabu sambeg mayamte pe mesiba chul teba chembodo lagwad morang tsawe lamanda wote jawakama da jabi dunjan muchadam bajire ta tendrege ju ne ten kalurum ju konkorten zolla travel document thobare mato teme thogmare phebe lamasola.
So in those years, those times, it was very difficult for the Tibetan lamas and masters to travel to the West because they did not have proper travel documents, they didn't have passports, and to obtain any kind of travel documents and travel with that was difficult. So it was through the connection of the 16th Jawan Karmapa to the third Bhutanese king, who was his sponsor and disciple, and also to his venerable mother, who was a person of intense devotion for the Dharma, who through their efforts, the 16th Jawan Karmapa, who was her root guru, together with Dujum Rinpoche, she helped Kalu Rinpoche and other masters to obtain correct travel documents.
Teni yijin bugen ta duse member imada songne te kalurum chil ta duse peche min yu sare ta ngai rogin yin song so.
And in that period, His Holiness the 16th Jawan Karmapa was aware of the fact that the time was ripe and informed Kalu Rinpoche of that fact and mentioned that it would be beneficial for him to travel now.
Tene ta dunchu ta pena dunchu nang la chasha na lama oli tang tene oli gi cham ta thongcha re hana ta dunchu che de yongge yo tene Canada ni yimba 남절 rinpoche 생겼지 요 남절 rinpoche 시세서 안한다 보스래 갑태디 따라와된 결론에 예마 대신게 남도 슈잡아지 오다 tinchu 제 시제 또 종교요 된 남절 rinpoche 생겼대 고란의 추소다 지 콜로마 몽보라고 요래 남절 rinpoche게 인지민이 패로 지슈네 때 된대 휴송 때 이진의 왜 패뷰 두된 케이스네 다 던추 던실로라 then rupa jabal ka nane tene yijinabuge travel document pesung te yijinabu lingjel pache me mangbo yore te de pena laman jigmerum che na tenzen la omze toptin zangbo suben la suben lodu sharap te che de pache payo chudu chubdun jela ten ruge travel document te pesung tene dunchu tunshige lonju rabo 등에 롱고라 tene 동바 아메리카를 패 tene 아메리카 내 제네 대 유럽 패버리.
So it was in the 70s when the first Western disciples started to arrive, amongst them Lama Ule and his wife, and also the master called Namgyal Rinpoche, who started his Buddhist journey as a Theravada monk under the name of Ananda Bodhi, and later entered the Mahayana path. And he was a teacher who had a large following in Canada and also a rather large Buddhist center there. And he was among the masters or people who invited His Holiness to travel to the West. So it was in the year 1974 where it was finally arranged that the Bhutanese king provided His Holiness with correct documents, and not only His Holiness but also his entourage, including Lama Jigme Rinpoche, Tenzin La Umsetup Tenzangpo, Söpen La Lodro Sherab. So there were perhaps 16 or 17 people who were part of the entourage, and at the end of 1974, beginning of 75, they traveled to America and through America to Europe.
Tene yichinawke kap tedu Amerika shola toze chongparam che tang tene Ananda Bodhige Canada shola koji daw shu tenzo la dawachi se yumendo dawachi gam ni tat kase yuyenge shu sebu chengemendo tendeji yu chene tene Europe supevre Europe la supene tene Europe longba kashel pe tene tamanrote France la pe de tene sanendela tene tabuka julin sing choso tu tu na ya che tomar tan de la yijin no korang ge kutsap ran che ne laman jigmurum che kong gi shabje de la umze tu den sangbo tene konan ba kashe ji ya na che ne de chu pe chu.
So it was the Master Trungpa Rinpoche who resided in USA and the Master Ananda Bodhi who resided in Canada. So His Holiness's journey involved spending a month or two in those regions. And from there he returned to Europe, visited several of the European countries, and finally arrived to France, to this place, Dhagpo Ling, and established this center. And also established Lama Jigme Rinpoche as his representative here, and with him left also Umze Tupten Zangpo and several other lamas here.
다데네 다데 다부가 줄린 통만 고축도 된대신 쭉나 인사요. 된대 쭉네 뒤다다 봐도 잖아. 롱 앞이 탐바로사로.
So that is the origin story of the Dhagpo Kagyu Center, and it began 50 years ago.
되네. 다롱 앞이 템베게린라. 다부가 줄린데 쭉벌었네. 낭바 산제바다 델람 미트타 몽골 차요르와. 데 강가 미 산지 점된데 그 나람도 돼. 되네체 당가나신게 냠네세 개 마tum나 산제 그 나람도 더 돼. 되네 바보 찐레서 원쇼 그 생하던서 나람도 돼. 또도 냠네세 같은서 강가 코로 타진 차로 그러봐. 코로와를 타이여버지 차송을 강가 디인도 하장게 좀래 첨부레마도 좀래 총총 말해.
So this means that during 50 years, tens of thousands of people were able to establish a connection to the Buddha Dharma, to the Buddhist path. And it means that even if they maybe did not become practitioners, did not follow that path much further, they still were able to hear the name of Buddha Shakyamuni, or of the perfectly enlightened Buddha, or of perhaps the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. And some even engaged in practices. And what that means, that for all of those tens of thousands of people, the end of samsara is perhaps inside, or samsara might or will eventually end due to that. So if one considers it from this perspective, it shows that the wholesome effect of this center is enormous. It's not a small thing. It's not a small accomplishment.
Pena dode kalba sangbunando kalba bada sutra nan songdo sanje shakje twe tsinte nalam tu lingji twa yin kalba tik gog dip tatu song etende do
Katsugi?
kalba ti
10,000. Yeah.
kalba ti good there 90,000.
Oh, good.
Tendeg didip yang tatu zever. Then tan dizo tsuk bal ten ta sanje ki tsin nanam to tebe me peje milling kashe chong yujiro. De yinde hajang drumde chembure. De drumde meba mare.
So in the Kalpabhadra Sutra, it is explained that just to hear once the name of the perfect Buddha, Buddha Shakyamuni, that through that one can remove the negativity and obscuration accumulated for 90,000 kalpas. So there were perhaps millions of people who came to hear that name through the activity of this center. So the accomplishment is enormous, actually.
Then tagana shinge tan the center zuk then center la yong center member nang ne to come to yong then ne ken tenso ge bana jinrezia gam yore sanje menjela sanje shakja tuba ta sanje tenzo chingan dan de sanje ge chen tenzo dong so ba tab che yore tang ye pe chen shubi na bana pa ko jinrezia wang shuk 생계 체인데 트 제르즈라 대별 로제 디게네 만 리스트레이션다고 송어 있나 때때 송도 제르즈긴 도랑 그나로 님마치라 만 사잔던 바이나 니송송도 민로선 타줘도 때 된다왕 안주 제주 종으로 와
So when it comes to this center also, there were many people who spent some time here, became members of the center, and what holds true for them is that they meditated, they engaged in meditations, they heard the precious names of the Buddhas, they recited their name, they prayed to them with devotion. For example, it is explained in connection with the noble Avalokiteshvara that to hear his name, give rise to devotion, and recite his mantra, if one does so 100 times every single day, then that means that one can avoid rebirth in the 3 lower realms. And all these kinds of results were facilitated by this center.
디 제도 벤나 던추 통할로랑 인 패체 진다 진다 덤페게 나리나 제페 나리인에 세부치랑 슈통미도 패체 덤베 나리 야네 초도요 나조 야네 초데갑라 군덕고 고마게 라마 겐더rumbuche 라마 푸르체 되네 켄포 카타르 라마 강가 켄포 추름 야수 디겐 송소 콘 넘버서 게 땅전에 야네 가주초 돌마동찬네 되네 콘 넘버서 무대 답전 전고리샤 된데 난소 다때 추부가 룩서시와 꼰자선 메인땅도 땡저 제고로와 땡저때 난소 콘 넘버서 나네 낭도 코나바서 강가 페트리 유차지질 이진도 뭔가 쇼송도 나 군던 짜리 군던 야짜인데 저니 잔센라서 이진도 저니 지요 공강을 가다 직대죠 내 가다 간책으로 쓰인데 이진도 고샤 최쇼송도 딱 가이나 때서 샤솜 체 야송 가다다 땅인데 저라야 캠부 연바 제고 그래서 간나서 되게 이민산 주사코란 라마소 나든데게 제야게 차지 코란 멜한데 바코란야 메 나라 잡아자자 진데데 기부요 잡아자자 데데 게요 말와 근데 코난 비찰라 그래서 근데 그도 대 강가다 룩서지 요와 게라 가다 그 되네 자제 가다 가르사 되네 레시제 다 된데 치료요래 되네 라마 겐더rumbuche 다 켄포 칸타르 남바니라 단다 라마 체카 권에 능수 된다 권에서 지어다 권에 그런 바치라 요래
Ja, dat is.
아 gombachi ki Dhagpo tila ganda sikiro, di kone te nang, di lama konga la yang rupen rawachi kone nang sa la yu, tene lama pursa la ya lama kone rawachi nang che ne, ta dozi maa kiri, ten nga su kanka la ka nang su ta, sanje tamba la shawa che go chu, tene paransi la ta ijinabu konge kutsab te, ta charan su she kiri, jekden ka wanda chana nga caw ngoma res, halam ta nga pan rabu, nga pun rabu din jingme la res, te nga te ya yus, chö ke teni yina yang, jingme la ke ju de shenji lab tsara yins, yina korang ke shenji lab yus, ten yin de jeba tamba samji me shaba ji res, jingme la, yina nga min ta goya kay mdos, ten yin de ya yu, ten di ropa la lama gendo charang pe go re, min zan seme shok, ten gendo ke shashi puru lama puru se pe gores kon nambas ni la te kanas ten lam tanda kembo kathar Rinpoche la kanane chara american roki american ronne american shebe deji zu utu de tene awatenzen la deyang yino kong la kongge pe nintu ku chokbo tanda shabachu jesi 공개 세이 공개 시간을 샤바초지 시간을 이진업 샤는 유네 내 분의 체를 퓨빈스 대인도 이진업 지도즈로 제스전 날 가신 야야미
TV 안 켜서나.
샤바초지서 geluk lama 쳔보래 대 예마 공학과 차송래 송미 유케래 된 권한 꾸샤 기샤 용도 쓰디 이진업 최대 팬도 왔으네 공자를 공다 pena ma kan classic show yu yorwa chete pen ne te konani kamyo chungs ten kamyo yon ne te tenzen la de yina bol pyu ne tenzen la da awon jingme sing ji yo tinni pyu ne ta nge de cancer go chel pyu bin chegen de ge ji du lenye kan ga zero nang shu chungs ten te yin de nge ko yon ten 네 강라 간섬 절랍체네 다 단단해 아메리카래 네 꾸섭체니 자유 델로빠싱게 차라인 로그레스 가나스 되는 알라 다 강난기 말에 텐선데 다 차라 배 잡지 창그rum부체 공로 야스 페버레 창그rum부체 렉샵슈 된 예마 금반디 기나나 차라 캠빌레가 레토 체고레스 간네데 체네 낭텐데 체는 아주 꾸스 te konamba ni so drupa jawol kan payan dewa na chene drug travel document kurne peson re
Su tenzinada awa june. Su.
te lama gendon ta lama purse ta lama kembo kantar lama konga tenzo ta kangan jigni dinam jugyo mare.
So it was in the year 1975, maybe July or August, probably July, or during the so-called summer retreat, when His Holiness, the 16th Jawa Karmapa, called to himself people like Gendun Rinpoche, Purtsela, Khenpo Chödrak, Lama Ganga, and maybe like that Sutrim Jamso that do use.
Sutrim Dedi Peptum Majon, the yes Jan Pech.
Yes. And also he called to himself Khenpo Rinpoche, and they went to some traditional proceedings in order to establish the auspicious connection. And when Khenpo Rinpoche arrived, he was met by the Chamberlain, Gyatsen-la, who gave him a kata to offer to His Holiness and told him to prostrate 3 times. And Khenpo Rinpoche said he didn't really know why. However, he did so. And on that occasion, he was named or given the title as the young or junior Khenpo. And Khenpo Rinpoche said that this was not in his plan. He did not wish for that. His intention was to spend his life as a simple monk, because that's simply a nicer way to do. However, on that occasion, His Holiness granted many titles to various lamas, including Lama Gendun Rinpoche, and named them. I mean, there's different kinds of titles that can be received, and for example, for Lama Gendun Rinpoche, he was named as the I don't know, the master of a monastery, let's say. So he gave many positions to many people, including Khenpo Katar, including Lama Kunga, who was named the retreat master. He also granted the title of a lama to Lama Purtsela and instructed them how they were to go about trying to accomplish the activity that benefits the Buddha Dharma. And he, on that occasion also, the 16th Jawa Karmapa explained that the Lama Jigme Rinpoche is a person extremely close to his own heart, that he is a person whose mind stream is truly endowed and positively influenced by the meaning of the Dharma, and he established him in charge of the center here in Dhagpo Kagyu Ling, and also sent Lama Gendun Rinpoche to assist him together with, for example, Lama Purtsela. He also, on that occasion, sent Khenpo Katar to America, and he Shame Chödrak Loju Sego Ere. Ta Shame Chödrak Loju Yancher Surona. Chödrak ta chik Tenzin da Awajunegi Loju chi.
Malam
Do you ere?
Malam.
Okay.
Ta chana kosamat. Shasha.
Ta gosa in a note yak potrimas.
Yeah. Well,
sorry. And then also Khenpo Rinpoche on that occasion thought, well, hopefully I didn't get any function, and he was nevertheless put in charge to assist the Trango Rinpoche, and also was established as someone who will be in charge of the institute in Rumtek.
DJs jene Khenpo Chödrak Ruyun Tsupechung Khenpo Chödrak Kanang ne Charan Dhagpo Kagyu le song tela sheda chuk tuwe che go yus zu tuwen rog re song ne den de tang nang pre
Khenpo Chödrak inataware.
re
And later, His Holiness also dispatched Khenpo Chödrak to Dhagpo Kagyu Ling with the aim of establishing a university here.
ta tende chene go zu bu re tene remji darje chin yorwa bena ta yema go chu kosum lo lan jingmer che kibil pe ne then 도그럼 저 가쇼 송도 스트링 안저 미팅 지요 송도 스트니 야군된 자리인데 정멜라 팬도 then 정멜라게 정말 미체게 이겠지 도그럼 살아이 찬도 때 도그럼 저기 샤디된 알수 도스때네 단디게라 삼차 카르도 송도 동보 때 이게 등에 말로야 로인데 이게 때 이진으로랑 그 샤디레샤 주들 코네게 사이 쩐도 쩐네 때는 마음빠나 나다 다고 깨줄인데라 데데 최고요 센 던싱 아시잖아 또들라 던싱 당고들라 초소야 부지 두고요 초소 두고베 조진 태양 남바 망부지 메망부 남바는 수슈에 같다다 초소 치두고요 델라 진레스기 초간도에 당 드는 잠로 모터 제 잠주 담반나에 왔다든 저 간간도 때네 던진이 빠들라 gambaji hoto sonto gambachi maungpana tene gelong matang gesu matang tene gelong gesu pa ten dorna sanji khor namba yebeke gandechi tsukutu de sonto ta di jetala gande tendeji tsukne yinchi menye Kagyu ben Shakyun targe Drupanch Tuktuba. Tati ni de Pena Kaingo. Choso Tsuye, Gambadye, then Drukan Tsuye, Tensin Sumche. Then Tensin Yevatela. Benzo Conchamboji Yabus, Ganando. Then Tangavatela Benzo Conti Nangla, then Benzo Contedan Relne, Institute. Shebe Dej Zugus, Shebe Dead Tugere, the Zugo years, the Zune, then one for Rabgungola, Pesan dedan the Tigoyers. Curriculum chick, one born ringing then the goose. One but Tamaji in a yanka you genuine, the Mashi Tame, so I get in to that church and the Lomsench dignant. Lomsen ready could on a conic side journal. Or take a chin to sins. Then a penzer con Yago Shiv, Jago on the canando. Tan dig get and Jigmela and the Toban Michigan Sonso. Jigmela get I, Nada, Khenpo Chödrak Rinpoche, then Khenpo Chödrak Rinpoche, Khenpo Chödrak Rinpoche, Chongyo Mare, that and they come up issue again, Nesu Kagan Rotsare. Tang and the son is done with each other, lead and those, then Sonso. There's some young to Tang Yin, Ling on a Kalakawa. When I won't rub Glomsin and Arange, treat to some hare, Zan and John Samare. Pay Jashambure, Hal Leve Jashambure. Pager, then something they sink in Kalakawa, some good. Then Dragel Homsin Jashambuchindu. Then that condition, I think I told him you that a music harguntos. Lomsin is a trick to non-service and one for rub Lomsin and I can cheat to some son. Tandan Kel Shusha goes. That mission not to none, Yashure, that you machen and you can the young doji song Saudi to marry and was and I can get you shade over the rest. Then the Ravat Jim Kentene, Jimmer Micheres, that and the Chick Chain and Chick Che, you have some kente. The main Shunan and Asho took Mendos, ye should go and use some mares. Then that can you rest, she in Towarmche. That Towarmche, she gets a nugget. The treat of some matumna, neck condition to Buddhism. Nan jictim mena pare, nan pesa yuna law, pesa yipus and rogi are, I think neck condition to goddess. Yet to woman resum, then the Jacham Butch Tigun. Then that can't sugar, then if you don't stand here, muscle. That tongue is so much tongue in shoe, then the sugar there. Then the Yama Yama Telaya. Dorm Kalasang Shosungtus. Then Shella Shagado, Shella Shesal Shamarum Chayo, Jigmerum Jendo, the Dogram Chayo, Nayo, the Pesha Hanayo in Aman and Tingimindo, Tang Consacashe. Then Anzo Kalasa did the Rumbucha Canon. What I Jigmela Katsa and a Lumsing the Dutch could they orders. Then Izin of Shagdi in Bacharani Gashag was. Tang Gain go to give you the Yamdon Derjus saying song. Ten Taka sugar, ya. Ten lasso shoe, Tang a Lumsing chair and then a cheat to some others. Drunk with Tanja sugar, Team Matum Night, Tubu and Bondo chat there, Pingmares. Penna song do you share song do you, I'll hear you Koran mess. Tene Taganashi called them by you share got a song those. Tang and young matters called them by you share your mess. Long Johnson Remato. Then you may show a song you share song those. Song share some others. There's to be a Mendos. Narang to some others. Then it dream and think Yachi to touch you. Then Narang that they huge songs. They told him that can be and the song at the day, Nanika Kandrachira chicken is a carelons. Think as though that the logic at the day young share.
So, what then produced the Dhagpo Ling center was able to flourish over the years. And then what happened later on in 1993 was that Jigmo Rinpoche arrived to Kibi and requested a meeting with Tobga Rinpoche and Khenpo Chödrak Rinpoche. And in that meeting, he presented them with the very famous letter that you are all familiar with. And Khenpo Rinpoche has read that letter and could see that it was written by the 16th Jawang Karmapa in his own handwriting, and it was also signed and confirmed by the 16th Jawang Karmapa himself. And the contents of the letter were the famous 5 points, which were that the 16th Jawang Karmapa stated that in the future the following 5 points should be carried out. First was to establish a Buddhist center, a nice and well-organized Buddhist center where people could come and meet with the Buddha Dharma and enter the Buddhist path. And His Holiness also specified the activity of that center to be, for example, the practice of the Avalokiteshvara ritual, the explanations of the meaning of refuge, and also the granting of the refuge vows or commitments. In that letter, the second point was the establishment of a monastery for the sake of the monastic sangha, meaning both the novice and fully ordained monks and nuns, so that the monastic community of the Buddha Sangha can be established. The third point was related to that monastery, namely the establishment of the traditional Kagyu retreat center. And the fourth point was the establishment of a very good library, and connected with the library, the fifth point was to establish an institute for learning. And that letter also specified the various curriculums and their details in accordance with the capacities of the future disciples. So there was a specific curriculum mentioned for those of sharpest capacities. There was a curriculum for those of middling capacity, and then there was the curriculum for those of the most basic capacities that was not to be done away with. So that was something that would have to be fulfilled. Now, this was all confirmed and signed by His Holiness. And when Khenpo Rinpoche saw that curriculum, it became quite clear to him that it would be extremely difficult for him to even attempt to teach the curriculum intended for those of highest capacities, because it was really an advanced curriculum. However, they were requested by Jigme Rinpoche, both Khenpo Rinpoche and Tobga Rinpoche, to consider what to do in order to fulfill the wishes of this letter. Now, Khenpo Rinpoche was not able to give the answer on the spot, and also Tobga Rinpoche prompted him to express his opinion, which he was not able to do. However, he acknowledged that obviously it was a letter written, a document written by His Holiness, so it had to be respected, and also it was Jigme Rinpoche who approached them, hoping for them to help. So they were unable to obviously refuse on the spot, But also Khenpo Rinpoche found it very difficult to accept all those tasks, because it would not be correct to do so if he thought he was unable to do so. So they took a day to consider it and met next day for a lunch, where again Khenpo Rinpoche was with Jigme Rinpoche, Togwa Rinpoche, and also Shamwa Rinpoche and some other disciples. And in that, it became quite obvious that they simply have no way but helping out, because Tobga Rinpoche also mentioned that if there is someone who will be able to help in fulfilling those wishes, it is Khenpo Chödrak Rinpoche. He mentioned that he himself didn't quite see his capacity there, also because he has sort of left the scholarly way of life already by then, which was his humble way of expressing himself. Anyway, on that occasion then, Khenpo Rinpoche agreed to assist in carrying out this point of establishing an institute for learning, and however making it clear that he feels unable to teach the curriculum intended for those of the sharpest capacities, because that included, for example, the explanations of the Guhya Samaja Tantra, the Chakra Samvara Tantra, the Sangwanyingpo Tantras, and for that Khenpo Rinpoche did not even have the explanatory transmission. So, however, he agreed to assist in accordance with the specifications of the curriculum intended for those of middling capacities. And the next year, this is how then the summer university or this institute started.
Tatin tangwe lot summer course de zude lot tangbo de la dawajik tata choi. Dawajik tata choi tawgaram che yue roba. Tene nganani ten choi. 대두 배제 댄더근도당 군초섬 예수temendo 된소 틱대비.
So in the first year, the summer university lasted for a month exactly. Khenpo Rinpoche was assisted, or had also Tobga Rinpoche here, and they explained the Sutra of Dependent Origination, and also the Sutra of recollecting the qualities of the three rare and supreme.
다 뒤테네 zonde 달로 파르도 제나 로숨 소직레 이나야 로직 조투요 말에 다 로숨 지담바 따단 로레.
And from that year, the summer course happened every single year with the exception of 1 year. So we mark the 30th year now.
다 타이지 이야기 렌라 가르첸도 ngazo somna tang yina ta cho jil somna tang na penaji sanje gi songrap singin ji yeba tang sanje gi songrap singin tela lobyong chena jeju yeba chi tene de chena be gotub yore pe de shebe yina pena yul ame kavla kuncho number sum di je la dewarshe pimpo singe rig de khar yimba 디제라 릭등원도 추르나 송축 톱구여바 디제라 송축들의 연된 가래 여바 뭐 디제테 숍스지 강가 모시 여바지 레데 요레 네 슈브레 파제 강나 간섬지 체인데 유저레 섬기요 데네 다가나 신게 오만 족반 라버지를 차샤나 Jukpa la semchi singe shongchup ge sem senken tela kunzup ji shongchup sem tang tandam shongchup sem mi ge yewa kunzup shongchup sem senge de lame kundan shongdam shu den ngarang zo semchen tamje ge tando zog sangji kompong drug yin sen so su je ne kap tamjal ne tenzo kunzup semche tang Tendam simche sa tangpo ne zong de top go su. Chepar do sa trubu kaptala tawe nam ya jachim bu shuji zong de barwa. Tije de la yang samno ji pa sem ge nang la shimju chen ji chen jeju yobachi. Tene uma jen re. Uma jen ge la uma jen singe de trumta re. Pena Hindu ge trumta nang la kanda kanyiwa Hindu ge trumta chuchi ge tawen dosu. Ten ti je la namba sanje be ge trumta nang la shedra nawa dodepa senzampa uma parge trumte nam yada tsangma shibjin trawa song yore. Ta uma jen de tsawarang da dudu rabuchi re de yena ya telan jamgo me phonumche ge tene rewa jebu shuji song yorwa. Dera chibu kabla meham gandaba chanjang jesu teche na nga songare. Ta teje te one tome tuine tanda padu yo denkin sola samna tangsan rawo shi zoe sha yo ra. Ta nangwa sanje par jing duga songsum rawo shi. Te ta nga zo lo sumchu ge chumre re. Te mayin pan do de jing na le ya leu chuchik padu chiba re. Shongju semba sogu sayin ne kapta shongju semba lamla labdu kandis lab gogu yoba tenzo kangang wote che yore. Tene shonchu sempe chonju leu chuyi dani jenda chiba re. Tela yang parudu simpe ke lamla kandis lab gogu yoba. Tenzo shosho ke nangba san tekba jir nangba san ye sheradan tekba chimbu lam gen rotang kari imba ting wote chu yorwa. Te daga na shinga lamram tarwaram bushi jen. 당에 레레네 슈데나 되선 고로래요. 다 용케 체와 된저 치요래. 타르진 다부지를 차샤는 엔엔된 전에 택만이는 지치인들라. 지 고야데 이진의 맥시멈 마슈데 체 마슈데라야 가유바 있나 타르진의 직 유라마드니 데 마시 탐에 송도. 대인도 대용인들은 아랑 가세 시시도 뽕체네. Nipado masona pone, yu lamalina jamgun rebegin chick, gulu rebegin chick, tea it of Devi.
So, what is it that we accomplished over the 30 years of the summer university? Well, Khenpo Rinpoche says he believes he managed to make people understand and be aware of the fact that the perfect teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni are something worthy of contemplation, of pursuing, and of studying. So, to give the example, he believes he succeeded in making people understand and know about the contents of the treatise called Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, which starts with explaining the three rare and supreme jewels, and then continues to explain the Tathagata Garbha, the heart of the Tathagatas. He then explains that when one actualizes the Tathagata Garbha, one reaches Buddha the enlightened state, which is endowed with qualities and manifest as certain deeds or activities. So he believes that for those people who attended those teachings, they do have an idea about the contents and the meaning of the teachings. He also has taught the Madhyamaka Avatara, where again it explains the development of bodhicitta, the cultivation of one's mind. It explains that that has two perspectives, that of the relative reality, which includes taking the so-called bodhisattva commitments from a master, and pertains to the level of an so-called ordinary individual who vows or commits to attain Buddha, the enlightened state, for the benefit of all sentient beings without exception. Then there is also the absolute perspective of bodhicitta, which explains how a bodhisattva practices or behaves from the first bodhisattva bhumi. And especially in that text of the Madhyamaka Avatara, the correct viewpoint or insight is explained that pertains a lot to the sixth Bodhisattva Bhumi. Then Khenpo Rinpoche also explained the text called Madhyamaka Alankara, which explains the various philosophical tradition and starts with explaining the 11 kinds of the, or mentioning the 11 kinds of the Hindu philosophical traditions, and then gives a presentation of the 4 philosophical traditions of Buddhism, the Vaibhashikas, the Swatantrikas, the Chitramatras, and the Madhyamakas. And the root text of that treatise of the Madhyamaka Alankara is a very brief one. However, the commentary that was used was that of Jamgon Mepam Rinpoche, and that commentary is very comprehensive. So, Khenpo Rinpoche says that he believes that the result of the 30 years of activities is that he provided people with, to paraphrase it, food for thought actually. And he also mentions that he taught he explained the 11th chapter of the Sutra Alankara, which again is a very important text. He also explained the Bodhicharya Avatara here, which is a treatise in 10 chapters and explains how one goes about practicing and perfecting the the path of the paramitas. And this means that he introduced people to the Buddhist path and specifically also to the Mahayana Buddhist path. People should now know how those paths work. He also has taught the jewel ornament of liberation 2 times in details. He put a lot of effort into explaining it because it was in accordance with the instruction of the 16th Jawan Karmapa, who said that when it comes to a Kagyu practitioner, he cannot be one unless he is familiar with the meaning of the treatise of the jewel ornament of liberation and with the contents of the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. So these treatises, Khenpo Rinpoche says, he put a lot of effort in teaching them. And for example, when it comes to the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, it was explained 2 times, once using the commentary of Jamgon Kongtrul Rinpoche and also using the extensive commentary of Golo Tsanawa Shunupal.
다가 신게 영어 이신의 야능배 기르끌음 예바tin 주낭라 용신 까병아가 해토바지 고송도 bên 용 까병아 까병아 그나네 다 우마데 죽바다 진이 휴버와 되네 다가 신게 ngân cột là cho ngân mình dễ để YouTube 요마래 대다 예마 단다 그나서 준된 데 캠퍼카선 분석 티 되기도 한다. 되네 디찹들은 예 가르슈비 있으나 켄주도 슈비 뭐 켄주 되네 세메 cột là 세만 남들 데 틱톡면도 그나서 개주 속에 영 톱사 말했어요. 남들도 하장 예 디찹들라 로름 동부 시기리나 네 세마릭ter 레우숨 되네 예망은숨 레우때 릭ter 레우 주인 바요 주기나네 레우가 죽제 네티브레 세메지데 되네 놀와테 다 게츠노 메사 예고야 가면도 텐데 야버레 that intention treat devare then denga treat java so ge transcription w zigna chen number so treat sadu de train to gonna mena ya number sanje be region da hachan yachim borendo ga samsumje chen number to ge tula koryu yobaji kana kansam kortu baji soyo de dang anzo losum juge tumdere samgdo ngarang ke te tumdere samgdo penang de go tongbo zude samakosung go tongbo zude nga lojib shengai 다 단다 로숨주 제르드 다 든치탕아 성교래 때다 조곤조고 신로 그러야 다 내야 지단다 예고는 시고에 차바도 개요 말했대 죽고 감돌 때나 단조곤 조곤로 해면로 성교도 대인데 다 대가파를 지잡아도 되래 된 단다 찍대 단다 니빠대 단 디펜저들 차샤나 오늘 전에 남배 벤저 찍는 게 섬나 배샤 망쇼여사 되네 대양 베베게 있점만 봐 되네 프랑스 인지 저민 된주게 있는 여배 대원 망쳐지 내 여대 버래 대인데 벤저 되네 세당 담바지 차요래 섬거다 양우직도 저 공시에 따르도 대 마음만나 베베게다 이게 로종 생기 여나야 내 벤저는 폐 지집나 때문에 인당 인든절 또저 벨로나 tum나 되네 랑 줄라 연된 용도 매용 생게때 벨로 접투도 메투블라래 그래sam거도
So this was also done following the instructions and wishes of the Jawan Karmapa, who made sure that, or who stated in his curriculum that all the 5 fields of Buddhist knowledge should be studied here, or the 5 subjects, let's say, or themes. So when it comes to the Madhyamaka, Khenpo Rinpoche did explain both Madhyamaka Avatara and Madhyamaka Alankara. When it comes to the studies of the Abhidharma, he was not able to teach the Ngonpadzu, what is it? The Abhidharma Kosha. However, he did, and however, that is taught by Khenpo Kazang or Acharya Kazang Punso here, and Khenpo Rinpoche instead taught the Gateway to Knowledge by Mipham Rinpoche. When it comes to epistemology, well, it would be a very lengthy and complicated matter, which also would be very difficult for the translators to translate, so that nobody was brave enough to attempt. And however, Khenpo Rinpoche did teach the Tsema Richter, which is a treatise from Sakyapandita in 10 chapters, and he says he believes he taught at least 5 or 6 chapters here. He did not teach the Vinaya teachings, because obviously there is not the monastic community, so this was avoided. And he says in his he thinks, or he is convinced, that the result of the 30 years of teaching here is that people gain some understanding, or at least the understanding that Buddhism is a vast and profound subject matter. And he mentions that when he started teaching the Summer University, he was a young man of 45 years. So 30 years later, here we are. He has aged, and his body is not as healthy. So he says, judging from the state of his body, he is likely to pass away soon, or death might be quick to come. So, however, maybe not necessarily, but can happen. However, he says also that when it comes to the library that was established here, that it is a very proper library that houses a large collection of various treatises, not only in the Tibetan language, but also in French, English, and German. And this accords to the wishes expressed by His Holiness the 16th Jawan Karmapa. And he also says that it is a place that is accessible for people who want to perhaps study Tibetan, and also it is a place where one can further and advance one's own studies by studying the treatises, and whether one develops qualities in one's mind or not, that depends on the effort one puts into studying.
대가 나신게 하게 용천부터서 되네 단대기 나한테 셰고나 양 된 통마 다 하게 용친 가르시나 양 되게 완전히 톱고고요. 되네 간저 예낭 잡으마도 완전히 등원에 시라 톱고요 말와. 대 완전히 마톱나 하데 셰 초고요 말에. 대시에는 양하도 냠는 최고 그래 마도 냠는 마체와나 저기요 말해. 된대 인자 믹스인데 하고 용던서 시라쇼토 마송 로숨주나들라.
And Khenpo Rinpoche mentions that when it comes to the teachings of the tantras and those great treatises, well, that is a more difficult matter, because to be able to explain and receive those teachings, one first has to receive the so-called great or complete empowerment, and in general what we usually receive are just the sort of authorizations. So from that perspective it's difficult to teach those tantras, and also once they are explained one has to practice them accordingly. So that is a very difficult procedures, and this explains why this has not been taught.
된데 되네 다디 제도 가게 용천부터서 땅하게 냠는 난키 망보요래 로보스래 대인데 대바지를 직 틱tum나 템베라와지 체네 되네 사문온도제 대시에베인 인나양 다 간데레기요나 텐텐제 셈보지 마총 되네 무투네 제주종마송.
So when it comes to the practice of the Vajrayanas, in Lebos there were many people who wanted or engaged in that practices. So Khenpo Rinpoche has attempted to teach the treatise called Profound Meaning, let's say, and however he was not convinced of the efficacy of that teaching, so he discontinued.
나라 로시기린라 배율라 단다 송바름부치 건바탕 나 주인님마름부치 건바솔라 땡아랑게 휴야베게 나가 꼬르데 파퓨차라니 이진의 공바 공샤요 삼삼 나라래 지 뽑아들어지요 나랑래 세준 롱준 티준요 같은서 파퓨차니 망쳐왔대.
So, on the other hand, Khenpo Rinpoche would like to mention that when it comes to the teachings of the Tantras, he did for 4 years teach them in Nepal in the institutions of Chögyam Rinpoche and Shangpa Rinpoche, and he offered whatever he had to offer, whatever the explanations and the lungs and the instructions and various things that he obtained, he passed them over. So from that perspective, he is quite confident that he fulfilled the wishes of His Holiness the 16th Jawan Karmapa.
대인데 소지를 선었다나 다 이진의 각하나 된는 망쳐지는 샵슈자요 아 도공공다 시소나 양을 접하면 삼성답지 양 제 단도 마셔야 되버이나 다 체크세 되버인들라 간시와 멜파 슈야 선바마도 Te shune ngala main go samsum ta jose go samsum tende ge rawa chune me chimbu che lame gongba kong tuna temba te ta nge che ge lang ma te le te yin ta.
So, from looking at it from one point of view, Khenpo Rinpoche says he feels he has managed to fulfill and assist in the fulfillment of His Holiness's wishes in the majority of them. So if he were to pass away this evening, from that perspective, he would have no regrets. However, should he continue to live, then he intends to spend the rest of his life sharing whatever his knowledge is with others, without any hopes for reward or fame. So this is how he wishes to spend the rest of his life, trying to fulfill the wishes of his Lama.
Tene ta 가르쳐 그래. 시민도 나 로제마 라양 사마코스 초토뱅에 몰람 얘기 무튼.
And Khenpo Rinpoche also says that he continues to make the wishes that, provided he does not pass away, he will be able to grant the summer course also next year as well.
땡에 가슴 시즌 멤버 삼노 당규 가인스나 다부가줄인데 원내가 잠블린데 나나 아메리카레 데네 유럽레 다가난신게 에시아야레 최소배 망고질 레송 최망고셰송 때 다부가줄인데 믹서와 사지레 때 임바때 양 고산들 지다 산딜라 레본데 셰파데 레샤레 로근도와 가르스나 다 뒤신도 님에 까브레 대상 산지에 땀만 림로 까브레 데레게 까브텔라 산지 점든 데기 야참 고만라고 때 베나 장우 릭베도제레 릭베도제 꾸töng 나나 송년 도와 베나 야참 이바 릭베도제라 소한데서 다주 신절로 세네 ngazo soate tebgyo penande sonde kunzi shamaram je songre yalsam ni par rikbe dorjela soande so daju shinjelo se yino damjon sonde kutenan yore o ten drave lamatege shinjela yabe nere.
So what Khenpo Rinpoche says now is not just wording something, it's heartfelt, let's say. He says in this world he has visited many Dharma centers in America, in Europe, in Asia. He has taught many teachings on many places, and he considers Dhagpo Kagyu, this place, to be very special. Just consider it. When you come here, your mind gets very relaxed, you become at ease. And why is that? Well, it is because despite the fact that we live in the times of deterioration, well, this place is one that was blessed or consecrated by the regent of Buddha Shakyamuni himself. It is the wording of the all-seeing Shama Rinpoche, who called or who said the following: the second regent of the Buddha Shakyamuni, called Rangjung Dorje. To him I turn and request him to bless my mind stream. So that person, the 16th Jawang Karmapa, was a extremely eminent master, and he has consecrated, blessed this place with his presence.
Tene pöge chögyun zimbachi la chashana pö konjin jongla lame jurim mendawala tene chögyu yi na zigi yorwa. Yin na yang changmal kadin che gona cheshöge lamate Guru Rinpoche re. Pena pöle temba tsuk yore, lasin tinzol tamran nang yore, chepar jingi lama re. Guru peme jasam ngumate, jabji dunjam Rinpoche re. Dunjam Rinpoche sanen de la pep, sanen de la yub, kama ku nyangin desang sanen de chayo re. Tindu nende chepar jingi labiyam ne re. Une tane, tindu sanen de rawachi la, choji xe tum na yang, shen kin la yang, sunam chenpo saagu yu re, nyen kin la yang, sunam chenpo saagu yu re. Di yin de, de che, tser doze dero che na, de nga rang ke kan tu tu, cho xe, penpa che, samsam da nga sem ke nang chengi yu.
So, in Tibet, in the land of snow, there, in accordance with the transmissions of the teachings, there were 4 lines of transmissions and traditions established, but they all consider the great Guru Rinpoche as the most eminent master who has managed to establish the Buddha Dharma in the land of Tibet. Now, his regent or representative was also Dzogchen Rinpoche, and he has visited this place, he has stayed here, and he passed into parinirvana in this place. So this area is a truly special, holy place. So if one is to explain the Dharma or listen and study the Dharma here, both sides accumulate vast amounts of merit. And this is why Khenpo Rinpoche says if he were to remain, then he intends to continue explaining the Dharma and benefit others this way.
Pena tiang xie yao zammare, xie xingin doi nang tu, chinsam xie kabla, lam xie kabla, da chinsam ren semago, da xie xingin doi nang tu, doni ngonsam to tokbe, michi kandu yug yue na, kandu nyangen lan de yue na, sande teni ke pakse yatsun cho la, pena karshu, 최딩 찬로 그래서 맞아. 그 사태기 야천 들어갔을래. 최법풀 비율 찬로 그래서. 그 돈이 또기 신gel랍샤요 그래. 땡에 나랑 그 촌낭라부터라. 내 망고도 세요. 배나 다보가 줄래네. 같이 타니를 레운데 샘들 허샤들 레용 거와. 대인도 오늘 사토비 제부 깔마바당 사타부 제부 자주 둔장을 묻혀 남바 니게 신gel랍샤거든. 대진도 라마칼루름 붙여 딩고 친처럼 붙여 내농 파우름 붙여 내종원에 전에 제부 탐바래. 대근시 샤마름 붙여 내족이 신gel랍야베 사진도 나조 산대 신랍 첨부시라래.
So saying that this place is a holy one is not just saying something, it is established through scriptural authorities quoting the Prajnaparamita Sutra, where it is mentioned that in the vicinity of the area surrounding a person who has achieve direct realization of emptiness. So around that person, the area of 100, what is it called? Pakce. A vast area around him, because an area worthy of worship. This is the effect that the realization of emptiness carries or grants. And this is why this place is so holy, so blessed, because it was blessed by the presence and also by the passing into parinirvana of great bodhisattvas who have reached the various stages of bodhisattva bhumis, such as the Jawan Karmapa, Dujom Rinpoche, and also by masters such as Kaldu Rinpoche, Delgo Chinsa Rinpoche, Nenang Pawo Rinpoche, and of course Shama Rinpoche.
Tene 단대기 차리 차나 양 타야 도지 양내 양도 팬 신질랍 되거든.
And also consider the fact that His Holiness the 17th Jawan Karmapa Trinadaya Dorje comes here very often and continues to consecrate this place. And I forgot to mention something Khenpo Rinpoche said before. One can experience it for oneself. Once one arrives here, one is nearing, then one's mind becomes much more at ease actually.
Tene daga nashin ge 양무식도 이제 깎아래 낭바테 던싱하데 차성 라면 지금으로 무슨 고치네 디 월을 살아난 게 성게 냠들 때네 드비어래 다동 있나야 제 넘버스 냠들 나야 때 미시버게 첨부해 삼거도.
And also consider the fact that they are the 5 wishes expressed by the 16th Jawan Karmapa, and the community here has worked together to fulfill them, presided by Lama Jigme Rinpoche. So Khenpo Rinpoche says he finds it very important for all of you or all of us to continue to work together.
벤나 산엔들라 쇼벤 남시네 사마루 파르투 지 추기 샤완라고 추기 단라고 고진도와 하루 이내 진도 말해준다 되네 다가나신 직체에 시로 이내 소간라고 송대 된 인공 tel라이내 직 최탄라고 주 직패대 추기 드라좀 고유여반대야 하장 개청부래 하장 깔바상부래.
And also, when one is at this place, then from dawn till dusk, there is Dharma-related activity going on. There is the sounds of Dharma-related activities going on, starting with the morning pujas. Then there is perhaps the various gatherings and teachings during the day, and in the evening, the protectors puja. And just to hear the sounds of Dharma constitutes a very precious opportunity.
Tene 다 양감 바론 좀 리브도제 깐나나시 delà 땅아주 사마 코스제 추투비하래 delà 셰당고네다레 요마레테 디 타니에라고 따시는 르그러와 다가나신기 벤저네 벤라진도 tene yalu bosle tsong gambane pe misiba yagu yore ten gama yenane drukong pe misiba mangbondu ta drwa yangye karchong yo mishete ta tondu drukong yo batsamte kadin chembore sam damdu nyima nyingane yemeto brwa chi nden ge yoro na de tene tenzo samje mishabe geza satsare gezangone thane satsare jigmer misheda keja chung pache 루콘스 논에 로섬 쇼섬 체야바 매 년동체 매로 송고도
동.
땡아 직동의 자자진 땡땡 요래 송 직동 앞자선 땡땡 요래 다 야마친 때가서 매로 송도 근데 대가스 지게 송하라나 매비쇼를 잡아샤 땡데제 뒤니마 인델 땡데 용해다 할레고야래 할레고 존슨 신긴 속에 다 가서 찍여 이여서 해결로 다 시절 텐데 요래서도 밑상마 딱 깔바 상보래도 가서 롱바든서 롱바 뺨미시바래도 와서 몇 바째 거야 근데 당대 다 드링카자 조건든서 난 아니 로보스 랩도 조건 많죠 고 잡šan도 셈바 쪼치시 라버지 레기도 아카 samsum라고 아직 제나 돈지메 인기로와 니 제나네 되네 몽도르게 내미시비 준센 때네 인기로와 대 데레마도 때 강가 분숨 초대요로와 대인도 땅고지 난케 jigmer muchere then taganashi di wall shalen nankin ta kechi samkin sunchola ni tapane tukjeche sengen manam jebshin bayi one yundu jebiyon yak taga sengara kajago shebme mesebe yakore ngone tranere 공사라는 거는 시에는 탈바도 탐지 침배 넘내지 senro 그래 삼나 땅땅 야고 지땅나 대인데 다 된저 다 드린 로섬주 예진 슈도 다 다같이 쉬잖아로 다시 해야 되는 게 동은 생각이 다 야.
So again, according to the wishes of the 16th Javankarmapa, there was a library established, a very good one, and also a center for learning. So maybe we cannot really call it a monastic university, but university or center for learning for sure, and a very large and yes. Yeah. And the library, and of course it's really nice that we all come to here for the Buddhist center. So also there was the retreat centers that were established and operational, and under the guidance here. And Khenpo Rinpoche said that he has talked about it recently with Lama Jigme Rinpoche, and they came to the conclusion that at least 1,500, maybe 2,000 people have completed the 3-year retreats. So those people, while in retreat, they didn't sleep their time away. They have accomplished enormous amount of virtue and enormous amounts of merit. So considering that we live at the time of deterioration, that is a wondrous affair actually. So these retreats mostly have closed down nowadays. Maybe because the causes and conditions, or the favorable conditions, are no longer present. Maybe because there was some lack of understanding of what to do and what not to do. However, it is something one can really rejoice in it. So again, we are very fortunate. We are presented with a very fortunate opportunity. And it is something we should rejoice in and feel inspired by. And Khenpo Rinpoche also mentions that he feels very grateful to all the people who continue to work together, presided over by Jigme Rinpoche, and make for all this being possible. So that's something extremely nice, that he rejoices and hopes that will continue. And he says this from the depths of his heart, honestly.
getsulung damba tsuishin to song ne yuk dengshin so ne halle goya re one tane chanzo yang jung do ka she nga kazan anela kesho le shuji chung one chamir mu ji song yo re ngan ji tu na trotob ji tang tring tu ni ma shindu sanje damba nyamba kamdala gelong damba songchin chi ni dragre songse te gelong damba phamba yi magwe ba shi yug de yona tingi ten drag do songse tamba nyamkha mal damba na ji songwa chuncho yang ha lebge phin song yo che perna sanje chamden de tamba de ta nyamkha mare de yo tanda tembe ne se gmond chena ta peche long tamba rawch lo ni tong abjala ge sarwa 대인도 다 담바 이메 값에 때 라던도 대제게 값들라 담바 나지 니마지를 송tum나 양 비용 삼점이 잡아 송요체 대인도 내 콘남버서 getsunungje yuk deba tsolin yin takwan tukjiche shwe chik tang ta getsunungje ma yuk nga ma losum shosum yuk deba mangbu shira yo che che namba tso yin na yang ta nga jik ting parba na xin re nga ja samne zan tuk to shamju yo ma re losum gring tala pe mesiwa leka lapshin le yo re di na ne songha dorji tekpe chuolan reba sha char re 대인도 송하게 담식된 졸에 자잡체 슈당 송하게 초고를 슈고 미치 레로진지 이나양 빼메 레로진지 이나 담식을 냠차매나 아 되네 제가 주루나 녀버도 성자 송래 대인도 거봐 타진 빼메 레차래 대인사 샘숙제 유대 빼게 참부래
Te churugi talachik tarpato biremena.
상제그래
Sanjagire, okay. So also Khenpo Rinpoche would like to say or make clear that the people who manage to upkeep the novice, the vows of ordination, novice or monk or full ordination, that is something enormously inspiring and beneficial. And he mentioned it recently talking with Anila Kemcho, that there is a statement by Chagme Rinpoche where he says if one compares a yogi or a practitioner of the past, accomplished one, and someone who manages to upkeep the monastic ordination, one of its forms, without giving into the 4 kinds of defeat, then they accomplish the same amount of virtue or merit. So it is truly amazing that people can still upkeep various form of ordinations or commitments, even if it were just the one commitment, because we are at the time of extreme deterioration. The presence of the Buddha Dharma is ending. The Buddha Dharma is coming to an end. We are at the times that are very difficult, very dark. So the benefit of keeping a single commitment correctly for a single day is actually enormous, and Khenpo Rinpoche would like to take this occasion to express his heartfelt gratitude for people who still do so, who upkeep their ordination and who continue in this way. It's a reason to rejoice, and this holds true also for those who have completed the 3-year retreats and perhaps do not continue in the monastic way of life and continue to live a normal kind of life. One should not put oneself down and consider oneself as just an ordinary worldly person. That is not the case. One should not put oneself down actually, because while in retreat you have established correct connection with the Vajrayana, and provided that you keep the samayas, even if you were extremely lazy people, if you manage to keep your samayas unbroken, that after the after the maximum of 16 lifetimes, you will reach Buddha, the enlightened state.
Pana 가장 하마 지금으로 치당하나니 여러 센터 투도 감묘중 달로다 다복까지는 수내 롱압시탄 바코베 까브레스 되게지 중 대값은 지금으로 생각할 송도도 베트남 글로벌 뜻이 나타난 중에 콘던에 개놈마 두자버서 단다양 단달로 보스를 야고 전에 육요레스 콘남버서 엔데 중도서 패제 gelong 예이나 고이나 진안나니 장가 보근도 텐데 중도스 감베총 때때 휴지총 콩데 때네 로벤 때시나한테 오늘 전에 সং주 선배 전부 임배 따레스 듄기만 되게 갑라 딘던 담바 휴샤버게 배 야고지 육토베다 할레버 봤어 마토 때콘 남바서 배나 벽 건반다고 담보진 개요 말에 로난 로초초로 담바 풀나 풀초초로 되네 라랑 소스 삼나탄 때 다고치에 미시베 좀대양 첨보리 따데 디 좀대 때야 다고가 주는 수비 좀대로 근데 다가나 신게 따데 원서 첨보리 쉬어줘 데레레 데바나 템반 지카마라 산지지 최고지 룰라 깨버춘셔 라양 배 미스버서는 묘 송도가 노이노
가서 그래.
산지 최고여로
야.
최고도 스스로 술 깨뷰 잠지 소나양 서는 배첨부레스 꿈미데 배 템반 냠베 까브르다
So Khenpo Rinpoche has met Lama Jigme Rinpoche in the European Center, and they have talked about these celebrations of the 50 years of Dhagpo Kagyu Ling. And in that conversation, Jigme Rinpoche mentioned that also in Lebos there's still some of the nuns who have taken full monastic ordination from the Vietnamese master, the famous master Thich Nhat Hanh. And it is extremely wondrous that they continue to keep their vows, that they continue in that way of life. And Khenpo Rinpoche also says that it is a sign of the master Thich Nhat Hanh being actually a great bodhisattva, because he has made for that to happen. He enabled the people to continue in this way of life, to uphold the monastic ordination. And also it is very inspiring and amazing that those people still manage to continue in that chosen way of life, because they are not bound by the rigorous traditions of Tibetan monasteries. They are more or less free to do what they want, yet they still reach the understanding and the inner conviction, and they continue in that wholesome life. And also this is a result of the activity of Dhagpo Kagyu Ling. So again, it is an amazing, miraculous thing one can rejoice in. And it is also said in the sutras that at the time of the deterioration of Dharma, just covering oneself with a Dharma robe or part of that attire is an extremely meritorious act.
나서 되네 아 제타고 가줄리 되네 제는 잠빌리 샤다 타고 가줄리 된데 다리에 공내 공도 펠베 만남 간시시 때문에 라소.
And so Khenpo Rinpoche says that he wishes that the entire life, entire world, and specifically also Dhagpo Kagyu Ling would continue to flourish and prosper.
땀반제니 감수 셴바동 땀반이에 연도 살아도 댄제 블록 파르신 제바 땀반이에네 베트라시 쇼 라마 공금종라 소환데 쇼도 꾸체링나 소환 텐레 다르신 제라 소환데 라마동 자와메 버신 제로 유젤레 절베 텐네 바 깔만 빠된 땀반님 보 쇼더 근접 잡인 주미 제 딱바람 페페베 트라시 쇼 That's all.